Today, I'm going to try to draw this tower in Krakow, Poland. If you're new here, which is impossible because I'm sure you've gone back and watched every other video, I travel full time, living out of a duffel bag, moving every few weeks typically. And this whole learning to draw thing has and will continue to follow me as I change locations, which I see as half the fun of these videos, so hopefully you do too. This one is the first in Poland, having just moved from South Korea, which marks, at least to me, the next chapter in this series. Going forward, I'm not sure how much travel information you guys will want, but in this one, since it's the first significant move I've made on the channel, I figured I would talk a little bit more about my lifestyle in general. Plus, the lines I'm drawing and the paper are both too bright right now. It's a theme, but we'll get back to the drawing in a few minutes. Let me start at the beginning. Not of my life, God no, but before all of this began. Over a decade ago, my wife and I were living what most would consider a pretty regular life in the United States. We both had normal jobs, a small apartment in a medium-sized city, but made the most of our time on the weekends going outdoors, going on hikes, taking road trips, camping, etc. During this time, I was picking up photography as a hobby. I always had my camera on me for these weekend adventures, so I would document the adventures and post the photos online, as you do. I built what today is probably a relatively small following, I guess. But for 2015 to 2016, it definitely felt substantial. At the same time, my wife was becoming enmeshed with an amazing community on Twitter, which I know sounds oxymoronic these days, but it was really something back then. She would share the photos that we would take on these outings and connect with other outdoor enthusiasts, which would eventually begin to include outdoor and/or photography adjacent companies in the communities. Outside of work, we would put all of our time and effort into this expanding blob of outdoor adventure, photography, and community for years. And one day it paid off. An outdoor company contacted us to become ambassadors for their brand. At the time, this was kind of the norm, it felt like, and if anything, a little underwhelming. Most ambassadorships came with free stickers and exposure on Instagram, maybe some free, lower tier gear or discounts on the better stuff. But maybe it was different for other people, but that was my experience. And by no means was I ungrateful. If anything, I was exhilarated by the whole thing. But the final ambassadorship, the one that changed our collective life, was just around the corner. So this outdoor company sent us some free bits of gear, ranging from, t-shirts and stickers, but then tents and then sleeping bags. They also pushed our photos on social media like crazy, and they were generally just really great people. After a few months of this, they told us about a program they were thinking of starting, where their ambassadors, of which there were, I think, about 10, including us, would take turns taking part in a nationwide travel experience via the van they were currently building out. At first, this sounded too good to be true, obviously. And even if it wasn't, getting our hands on a van in a different state for like a weekend trip could have been fun, but might have been more a hassle than anything. However, they said that each ambassador could pitch their desired route and destination and how long they would like to have the van, to live in the van. This was something I had always talked about, something I found incredibly interesting, but ultimately, in practice, impossible with a normal life. But with this opportunity knocking, it was kind of a chance to make that dream a reality. So we thought it over, chewed on it, mulled it over for a few days, and ultimately asked them for what we thought wholly improbable, like definitely impossible. And that was 8 months. With 8 months, it would mean I would have to quit my day job as it was purely physical labor. And my wife would have to ask her job if she could change and work remotely. Uh, Ding, ding, ding. Time in the van was paid for, including gas, food, and maintenance. But we were hearing that most ambassadors were asking for a week or maybe two on average. There's no way that they would go for it. And just kidding, they did. They said yes to 8 months, and it changed our lives. My wife was able to transition to fully remote, and I was able to quit my job and focus on photography. They approved our trip with a few months buffer, which meant in that time we had to sell our cars, finish up our apartment lease, sell most of our things, and pack the rest of our things for this new lifestyle. We spent those 8 months in the van, October to May, traveling through over a dozen states, camping, rock climbing, meeting other enthusiasts and photographing the whole thing. Little did we know at the time that those 8 months would extend this on-the-go lifestyle all the way to now, almost 10 years later. The day before we returned the van, we bought our own van and continued for another 6 months, hitting at least another dozen states, as well as Canada. When we sold that van, we also had to sell a few more things that we kept in the van with us, packed even smaller bags, and crossed the ocean for a small Airbnb on the outskirts of London. That was our first trip abroad, our first long-term trip abroad. We stayed a month there, moved, stayed another month, moved, and kept about that pace until today. I guess we would be considered digital nomads, or at least fall under that umbrella, but it does feel a little underwhelming given the circumstances that got us here. So yeah, if you were curious as to how I'm moving around like this or how it all started, well, there you go. It all started with the ultimate millennial cliche of living in a van. Now we're still moving consistently, although we like to add in some variety with shorter and longer stays here and there. We're spending surprisingly quite a lot less money than we ever were back before the van days. And there's not really an end in sight, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this channel. Along with the drawing, I wanted to offer something of value that is displaying different parts of the world as I see it, at least while I can. This concept could, of course, work anywhere. You could draw anything anywhere, but I think it adds a little something extra that not just anyone can do from their bedroom. Okay, enough about that. Let's talk about the drawing real quick while we have time. It's the first one in Poland, which is considerably different from South Korea for so many reasons, but maybe I'll talk about that more in a separate video. I chose this imposing brick tower, and I'm glad I did. Subject-wise, I think it's quite different from what I'm used to. Like, you've seen what I'm used to. There are lots of different shapes and directions, and due to that, I was actually pretty anxious to try this, but it turned out better than I expected it to. I'm feeling like I can trust my eye a lot more now than I have been, so this thing came into being pretty rapidly to me, at least. You can see here that I've already sketched out the general shape of the tower, the path leading to the doorway, the brick wall, the tree, yada, yada, yada. So now I'm getting some of those details drawn in, and this is where I felt pretty good and rushed kind of at the same time. I think being in a new place and drawing something so new had me overthinking a lot, so I do tend to rush the rest of this. Given the general silhouette I've put down, I wish I would have given myself another 10 minutes or so just to take my time, as I think it's all looking pretty good, but that's okay. I have plenty of time to get settled here. This is the first of many, so I'm not worried about it. There are definitely some perspective imperfections you can see. So finally, I think I'm gonna spend some time with some YouTube instructional videos for some quick and easy tips. I don't want to get too in the weeds just yet, but I probably should have some cues I can use to help me with scenes like this one. As opposed to some previous drawings, this one I absolutely could have taken further. But in the moment, I was conscious of what I've said recently about how sometimes I tip over the edge into the details or shading in a way that kind of ruins the drawing for me. Sometimes I wish I would stick to a simpler line drawing. So that's what I did here. I think it has a nice sketchy feel to it. And if I'd only gone in and shaded some things for a minute or two, I think I could have ruined that feeling. Like I said, another 10 minutes of careful, considered drawing would have done this some good, I think. But I just know that if I tried to jump in at the end to fill things out, I would have regretted it. So yeah, this one's a first from Poland. Very sketch on a napkin sort of thing. Very light, but I'll take it. I didn't think I'd manage to capture the shapes as well as I did, so I'm happily surprised. What do you think? Also, how do you feel about the longer story time sections? It's not something I want to do often, but maybe coinciding with big moves like this one could be fun. Let me know. Anyway, I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.